You are on the brink.
You are on the brink. You are on the brink.
Warning. Warning. Proceed at your own risk. We are now entering the underground. The algorithm has no power here. Your eyes and ears are vulnerable. Prolonged exposure may cause psychological damage. If you experience symptoms, return to the surface at once. Welcome to the BRINK Film Club.
Welcome to BRINK Film Club. I am your host, David Pike, and joining is my co-host, Veronica Chase.
Hi, kids. How are we? Ready to dive into some cinema fun today?
And today we have Josh Belhumeur.
Yeah. Hello. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, introduce yourself. This is something that the audience doesn't know about you. What do you do? What is...
Audience probably doesn't know me either. No. So I'm the CEO of BRINK, who is the media company that puts this out. So I forced my way onto the show for my own ego. But my whole background is more on marketing and advertising than it is in the world of film. But I've spent a lot of time on sets. And so I think a lot of the perspective I bring is more of the craft of actually making storytelling. I'm also a screenwriter, director, all of that. Definitely have a little bit of experience doing, shorts for myself. And I call myself cinephile. I'm a big fan of cinema. I may not have the depth that the two of you have when it comes to going way back in the history of cinema. But I might be able to bring a unique perspective. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm a genius. It's just my stuff is very niche. Like when you really scratch down deep, my stuff runs like from 3 streams. Like it's not complex. Now, David will watch some complex stuff. Mine stuff's a little bit more superficial, a little more exploitation, a little more fun.
No. I like to have fun watching movies. It's
necessary.
It depends on my headspace. Sometimes I enjoy being very challenged with a movie where it's like I wasn't having fun, but I'm very glad I watched it because it's percolating in my brain for weeks and weeks and weeks. So
That's actually a fun thing for me to do. Is when it percolates in my head for like days and days. I love that. So yeah. So
It was like that the first time I saw Clueless, just in my brain. No, for real, that was a great movie. But anyway, I digress.
what is a motivator for you as far as your creativity go? What kind of excites you to create what you do and your creativity in general?
yeah, I think for me, the biggest motivator is about the power of empathy through story and getting to see and experience the world through another person's eyes. I love that as a process. I love getting in somebody else's head and being able to really try to think and understand from their point of view. When I write, I'm often playing a character when I write. Sometimes I find like I'm like, my writing's not very good right now. And I realize, I'm just writing. I'm not getting in the heads of the characters that I'm supposed to be representing. So it's really important in every project we take on, considering that a lot, as I mentioned, a lot of the work I do is from more of a marketing and advertising and advocacy perspective. Usually we are trying to do storytelling that is rooted in audience. And so it requires getting to know that audience first and foremost. And so usually my process is going in and consuming the same type of media and getting like a cultural connection, within the audience that I'm trying to reach. And then really trying to put myself in that headspace. Certainly we usually get other voices in the room. We like to form little writers' rooms and all that. So we have different perspectives, and it's not just me, cosplaying as other people all the time, but that is my favorite part. And then from the perspective of enjoying film or enjoying storytelling in general, I think the biggest example I like to use that I think a lot of people understand is like when you watch Jordan Peele's Get Out and you go through the whole journey of the story and you get to the end and he escapes the house and then you see those police sirens and we all just like have that feeling where like our that pit in our stomachs. That's what I'm experiencing what it's like to be a black man in America, right? in a way that I never would be able to because of I went on that journey. And that's what I love about being in this world and enjoying a story in cinema in particular.
Is there a particular genre, a particular way of telling a story that really pulls you in the most?
Yeah, well, and you'll see this in the film I chose. I know you had my colleague Malcolm on before, and me and him are very similar in that we get really excited by really playing with your sense of reality, of what's real, what's not. I feel like a lot of my perspective is rooted in like metamodernism, which we are like firmly in that movement right now, which is you really have to take your stories and you have to add these like as many layers as you can on top of it of artifice in order to get to some sort of emotional truth. It's hard for, I think, people in my generation. I'm 36. I feel like it's hard for us to connect with like more sincere stories anymore. I think it's a byproduct of capitalism mostly, and probably the work I do. But yeah, it's like when you add all these layers of irony or like I said, artifice, like different ways to kind of draw your attention to the fact that you are engaged in story, that ends up getting to the truth faster. And so I'm always intrigued by that. Sometimes the more layers, the better. And in the film I chose here, this one's interesting because you can enjoy it one way, and then if you read about the process of making it, then you get a completely different perspective on it.
Right. Yeah, no, it had a very sort of studio reality show. Sort of reminded me a little bit of like a Parks and Rec, almost. And I think that's one of the things that sort of drew me into it, because that format it's very entertaining.
If we're already talking about the movie, let's just get right to the movie.
Yeah.
So you choose, what was your movie that you chose?
So Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, which is from 2020. And you have to, I think that the best way I could describe this movie, it's if somebody took Billy Joel's Piano Man and made it into a movie.
You're just in time for the knot party. We're not having fun in celebration of not closing. I'll get y'all. Yeah.
Is this a real thing? Is this really happening?
You and I have talked about that.
20s. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking how I'm doing. First person today.
Anybody want a drink, a shot, tell a story?
You're making me realize I haven't smelled that smell in a long time.
What kind of a party is it if an Australian guy doesn't take his pants off? I've been saying that for years.
A hangout movie in a sense of you are following the story of a bar in its last night in operation in Las Vegas, and all the regulars coming in to just like christen it off and just have one last night together. And it's presented as a documentary. The genre is listed as documentary. I think it aired at Sundance as a documentary, but it's not. And that's the fun piece of it, is it was the whole thing's an experiment where the filmmakers got a lot of, I would say, like community theater tier actors and some non-actors, put them in a bar. I think they shot in New Orleans, and just rolled the cameras and gave them like a little bit of a framework, and they genuinely get drunk over the course of the night. And so there is like everybody who's in there is performing, but I feel like there's a number of moments throughout the film that you see these genuine glimpses of like something incredibly real that I haven't seen that often in film. And that's why I get excited about this. I really connect with a lot of the characters in the story. And I think it's interesting that like if you go like Google it, you'll sometimes find some chatter. I found like a Reddit thread where somebody was like, I found out the whole thing's fake and I hate that, and it changed my relationship with it. And I feel the opposite. I feel that if it was a real documentary, everybody would be aware the cameras were on them.
Right.
And they would all be performing anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
By contriving this scenario where they do need to perform a little bit, you can tell some of them are really pulling from their own personal experiences. And because the cameras were just rolling for so long and they were drinking and stuff, eventually the performance does start to fall away. And then you end up getting these like incredibly human moments that are just very rare to capture on film. And then overall, they did a brilliant job of organizing and editing it, where it does feel like there's something to say and something to speak to, and they hit on a lot of social issues in America. It's a great conversation about America, in addition to these like very human portraits that are within it.
I enjoyed it. I mean, at first, I'm not going to lie, I watched it and I was like, no, I don't understand exactly where are we going with this. But, once into a little bit, they sort of imply what's happening. How, oh, yeah, this is the last night the bar is going to be here. So one of the things that really got me in was one I mentioned before, I like the format. And, I've been in instances where the final day of this restaurant, final day of this comic book shop. So I've had moments in my life that sort of this film sort of triggered those core memories. And what was interesting is I would sort of drift out of the movie for a moment, and I would sort of be transported back into that moment when I knew things were at the end, and you just feel that emotional journey again. And then you find that your emotional journey is really matching the one that they're doing on screen at the time. And for me, that was something that was kind of special. Because, I mean, just at the surface, just to look at it, it's like, okay, so we're just going to watch a bunch of drawings just slobber all over each other. But there's so much more to it. Like you said, there's that layering. And there were moments. There was the one gentleman, as he leaves, he's crying. There's a few times when he's very upset, and it doesn't seem acting. I've been in the bar scene for over 25 years, so I've seen people run that emotional gamut the moment that the true serum starts to flowing, and it felt very real, and I kind of appreciated that. Out of something that, like I said, at the surface doesn't really look like much. But when you invest yourself into it, just a micro bit, you realize there's some actually storytelling going on here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had to look it up right away. I was like, okay, what is this place? I gotta, so halfway through the movie, I'm already on my phone, like, what is going on? Like this. But then it was like, okay, right off the bat, I was like, okay, if it's closing the last day, usually bars, places like that are packed. There's so many people who want to go in there, do a last drink, whatever. So I was like, okay, so I'm already feeling this is kind of made up, because it would have been very, very different if it's been a bar that's been around forever. And so that led to it. But one thing I really liked about it was that they were drinking. And so what you said is that was real. The Truth Serum came out. It gave a whole new dimension to it, because I read that they're improv people, whatever. It's not really in Vegas. It's in New Orleans. It's but the drinking is when things were really interesting. But I've been at the zillion bars, and this is no different than the buffet, a lot of other places. And for me, I liked it, but I wanted more.
Yeah.
I wanted something more out of it, because it was like, okay, I literally was in this thing a week ago. I saw all those same people a week ago at a bar. I'm like, I kind of wanted something more from this movie, but I liked that it was you're looking at the aquarium, you're seeing how things are. It's almost like reality TV, but not. And it's I liked it for that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, in some ways, more of an experiment than essential cinema or whatever. But that was why I liked it, because I feel like it is, usually when we talk about experimental film, people think of batshit insane stuff and fast cuts, and so to do something that is one of the more experimental films, I think, in a while, to be so still and so, visually not experimental, I thought was interesting. I think in addition to the idea of the alcohol being a truth serum, I also just think a big piece of it is when you give people that much time to fill where they're supposed to be performing, they have to start drawing from their own truths more and more and start to reveal more and more of themselves. And that's what I saw coming out. And so, yeah, so I almost wonder, I know these filmmakers made another film after this that I haven't gotten to see yet. And I was hoping to see it before we recorded, but I didn't have time. That this one is scripted, but I think maybe not. Maybe they're lying about that. I don't know. Like I know there's layers to it. And it's a road trip movie where you're following people. So I'd be really curious to see that, see as they continue to hone their craft.
Right.
Because they're not that well known. This is definitely pretty underground right now. But I think we're seeing the seeds of somebody like these filmmakers who might, maybe 10 years from now, we'll know them.
Yeah. I mean, I was very happy that I saw that this premiered at Sundance because I was looking through their filmography, and their movies premiered at like all these other festivals, such and such. But this was their first one to premiere at Sundance. Actually, funny, right before COVID hit, so it was kind of funny. I saw 2020.
Which, real quick, I do want to add that later. The first time I saw this movie was 2 months into the lockdown or something like that.
Gotcha.
And can you imagine just the emotional impact of having a movie that does such a good job of approximating what it's like to be at a bar?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Before the lockdown. Yeah. I had to have been a crazy night before the lockdown went up.
Yeah. And so I think maybe this movie's even more special for me because of that, because I remember having a very emotional reaction to it when I first saw it, being in lockdown, and then actually feeling like I was in the bar with these characters.
Yeah.
That, maybe it's harder to recapture that content.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that brought a whole new depth when you watched it to where I am now, or I watched it at this point. Where like, I just went to a bar like that, a week ago, whatever, where we were in lockdown, and when you watch it, like, I kind of miss being in a bar like that because we're in lockdown, and when are we going to be able to so it's very interesting, different points.
So it's sort of like it's sort of like it's a situational thing. Like, depending on what you're at in your life at that moment is how maybe a film like this would affect you.
And I think that goes with almost all films. I mean, I've watched a movie years ago, and I was like, and then I watch it now, I'm like, okay, this is really good. Yeah. Like, it's just, you're in a different mindset, different time of mind, and certain movies will resonate with you at certain points.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
And so, I understand it. Yeah. During lockdown, this has been a great movie to watch. Totally.
Other than are really depressing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Because you're like, I want to be drunk with my friends. Well,
yeah, you miss that. So.
A little bit. A little bit. You can only get drunk with the wigs in the closet for so long before the neighbors start calling you weird.
Yeah. Totally. Let's do Rejuvenator.
Yes. So I brought a really fun one for you this time, kiddos. So this was inspired by a 1959 movie called The Wasp Woman that was by the late, great Roger Corman. This one came in at a budget of $230,000, and it's very formulaic, it's very predictable, but it's a great ride. So it came out in 1988. I would call this a proto-Death Becomes Her, because it's got a lot of the elements. Like there's the rejuvenation, then there's what happens once the rejuvenation takes place.
You are a new woman. You will have your youth once again.
Happening to me? What is happening to me?
You're experiencing some complications.
Complications?
This movie really, it just contains it all. It's got youthful serum. It has potions that promise to turn you into something beautiful, but then turn you into a carnivorous monster. It has overacting. It's highly camp, and it just resonates with me for some good reason. The first time I saw it, I'd gone into a mom and pop video store, and I was sucked in because of the VHS art. In the 80s, that was very much a thing. You went into the section, and there's oftentimes movies of this caliber or even lower, but it was that VHS box art that made you go to grab it.
So cool.
Yes, she is. So there's an Asian actress who basically has hired a scientist to develop a serum. Her day in the sun has passed, and unfortunately, she's no longer getting roles. She makes a comment that it's been 20 years since she's actually had like a really good role. So she thinks that this magical serum is going to rejuvenate her and restart her career. Unfortunately, does not go that way for her at all. This was written and directed by Brian Thomas Jones, who's also known for working on Big Bad Beetleborgs and Sweet Valley High.
Oh, wow.
So it sort of speaks to the tone and the overacting and the really just fine layer of schlock that's kind of slathered on this one. But I love it. Love it. The special effects, they're interesting. Every time she transforms her head, it looks like they dump more pool noodles and latex on her dome.
Yeah.
So it's interesting with that. I love that her voice gets deeper and deeper and deeper as the thing goes. There is some really good practical effects. There's one scene where her face is bubbling and she's pulling hair out. That's really a striking.
Yeah, the effects were
Oh, yeah. Well, especially for when they were.
Oh, I know.
You know,
Yeah.
It's a pleasantly old-fashioned horror film while still integrating a lot of the sort of the themes and the tones of how a horror movie was being sort of manufactured and sort of pushed out in the late 80s. In foreign films, this movie was called The Rejuvenatrix. When it first came out, it came out in a pretty wide release for the first week. Then after that first week, it bombed, basically, and it sort of went through this process where they were trying to make it into a modern midnight movie, but unfortunately a little too little, a little too late, and it didn't really take off. And I kind of feel like that's why this movie is sort of lost in sort of the sands of time.
Yeah.
Because in that great movie void.
I noticed that it's very, very hard to find any sort of copy of this.
Oh, it is.
It's not even on streaming.
Yeah.
It's nowhere to be found. I'm happy you found a link to it on YouTube.
On YouTube of all places, I was completely surprised.
And it's, you can tell it's the VHS copy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a transfer.
There's no HD of this.
No.
Not at all.
No, that was like, what, a good 480p back then on VHS?
Oh, no. VHS was like 280 or something.
Was it?
480 is DVD.
Oh, okay.
So VHS has got to be like 280 or something.
Or 240.
What's 240?
Because it wouldn't be Super VHS. It would just been commercial VHS then. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of elements to it. There's, like I said, high camp in many ways. It sort of feels the same sort of tonal quality as the one I brought, I believe it was last time, Die Die My Darling. That sort of overacting. Like every line is like, oh, how dare you, Richard. You know, just that very, almost sort of a 1940s noir in the way that they sort of overreach.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just deliver that dialogue. You just spit it out and chew up the scenery in the same breath.
Mm-hmm.
So
everybody except for her servant, who like just was the flattest performance the entire time.
Yeah.
It was so hard to read him because he was. Are you trying to be creepy? Like I couldn't understand what he was trying to do.
No.
And you know, the director kept giving us nods that he was important. And I was trying to figure out how he was going to weigh in, and it actually did not go where I thought it was going to go. Very interesting, but like interesting choices by the actor and the way he chose to play it in contrast to everybody else.
kind of like, was it Max von Sydow that was in Sunset Boulevard? Sydow.
Yeah.
Sort of that relationship a little bit, her and Max.
I don't think
a little bit of that.
Encino in Sunset Boulevard.
Oh God, who was it?
I don't think he was.
Well, anyway, he was the one. He was in it. He showed back up as an actual director who she thought he was going to redirect her in her regenesis back into film. But anyway, her whoever her servant was, he was her producer and director during her heyday. And it sort of felt a little like that sort of codependent, we've been together forever. I was there when she was at her pinnacle. I made her who she was kind of thing. But so now I'm still here because I either love her or I feel obligated to her.
Yeah.
But either way, the relationship, for me, it felt very reminiscent of that one from that movie.
No. 100%.
Well, and even when the poor guy gets stabbed and foams out of his mouth, even that's wooden.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you die woodenly?
In all honesty, these special effects, I miss movies that have special effects like this.
Practical.
These were just practical.
Yeah.
It was, for a budget this small, the effects were like, I was watching, I was like, wow, that's so cool. I was like, it's great. And for a movie that's, the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's very formulaic. You know exactly where it's going to go. You know exactly how it's going to progress. But something about it is very comforting in a way.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's got that 1980s feel that only this kind of movie can deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first started watching this, I almost assumed you chose this because of the substance being like a hot topic right now. Have you seen The Substance?
No.
Okay.
But you know what? It's funny. When I saw things about The Substance, I literally thought it was about the movie called The Ooze. It was where they're eating it, and it's like
Stuff?
the stuff.
Yeah.
Where they're eating it is killing them.
Yeah.
Honest to God, at least I thought it was.
great.
At first, I thought it was like a throwback to that movie, so I haven't invested in it. So it's a new thing, huh?
Yeah, well, and I guess none of us have seen it, unfortunately.
Yet.
But yeah, it's a really hot topic right now because it's I guess the first big film movie has put out.
Let me retract it. Yes, I'm ahead of the curve. I'm aware of pop culture, kids.
But yeah, a lot of people buzzing about it because it's just a good film, apparently. But it seems like it's very well parallel to what this film's doing.
I like that.
Aging actress, aging model that wants the serum to get younger, and it has side effects.
It's a trope that I love.
Yeah.
You know, it's in one of my favorite absolute movies of the world, Death Becomes Her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's great.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it also speaks to the fact that I am a huge exploitation fan. And if this doesn't jump all in that universe, I don't know what does. Like, it's not particularly a exploitation movie.
Yeah.
But it is under that umbrella.
I agree. I totally agree. I was thinking about that. I was like, this is kind of exploitation.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, because it speaks to the fact that once you reach a certain age in Hollywood, as a woman, you're either invisible. Well, Sybil Shepherd said it perfectly one time. You're either the cheerleader, the mother, or the crone. And there's not like a gray area in between any of those.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That's very true. But yeah.
So I found I thought the director was the hero of this film because, yeah, the script's not very good. But there's a resourcefulness with the budget. Yes, the effects were incredible. I noticed production design touches that were clever. You know, like she had this statue of like a greyhound or something. And it would show up in so many different places. You could tell they repurposing it as this like sign of her wealth. But like all of the, you know, it was basically two settings, right? It was the lab and then her mansion. And they took really good advantage of both settings and the way they set it up and all that. And then he did a good job with like, I think a lot of the pacing and a lot of, not necessarily innovative camera work or anything like that, but like really held it down. And I think like the rough edges with the script or some of the performances, he did a good job of softening them and is the one that made it really work. So, yeah, overall, I'm glad I watched it. I enjoyed it. It was a good ride. I loved all this slimy, moving creature like the rat and her head and everything was just wet and dripping wet and slimy and gross and convincing.
The phone booth scene.
Yeah.
Which she apparently hits her so hard to like just against the side of the inside of the phone booth. Just disgusting. Yeah. But great.
And it had a really fun 80s band.
Yeah,
like, you know,
it did. Oh my God, yeah. The rock band.
Rock band.
Oh God. God, that woman couldn't carry a tuna in a bucket if she had to. But we got to see boobies through a mesh shirt. You know, that was obligatory. And I mean, at that point, there was a lot of that going on in movies. I mean, even a movie we showed here not too long ago at the screening room, Serial Mom. It had a female punk rock scene in it. So, you know, that's a good way to bring in rock and roll and boobs.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Rock and roll and boobs. Hairband hair, boobs, mesh shirt. Check.
All right, let's move on to my film.
Yes.
Mine's 13 Tzameti. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. That's a Georgian way of saying 13. It's not the French way. So this movie is roughly about an immigrant family from Georgia, obviously the country.
Right.
And they're in France. And so obviously they speak French and whatever. But I found out that I think the filmmaker is also that way. So he kind of like did that as well. He's from Georgia and lives in France, and so he actually named it Tzameti 13. It's to describe this movie. It's like what I felt was one of the best ways is to just watch it and not reveal anything.
100%.
Because when you're just like, I don't know what this is, I don't know what I'm watching, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy fucking shit, what just happened?
Levez vos armes! Faites tourner le barrière! Traquez! Levez le chien! Dès que l'ampoule s'allume, on tire! Tout le monde fixe l'ampoule!
13 Tzameti. Place your bets.
You know, the light bulb, the gun, oh my God. And you're just like, it just builds this tension, and it's yeah. Okay, so I watched this movie when it first came out years ago. I think it's 2005. So I saw it when it came on DVD, like probably 2006. Loved it right away. I have my copy. It's been on my shelf forever. I won't sell it. And like, when it was time to pick a movie, I was like, I haven't seen this one in a while, and I think I'm going to throw this one in the bunch. And I had to rewatch it because I haven't watched it in so many years, but it still held that feeling when I watched it again. It still had that feeling, and I was like, this is why I'm keeping my copy. And I found out that it's not on streaming. You can't get on Blu-ray, and the DVD is like a rare now. Like, you can't find this movie anywhere to watch, and I don't know why. They did remake it with Mickey Rourke and a bunch of people. The same director remade it, but I have not watched that, and I wanted to watch it before this show, but I didn't get time. I hear it's not as good as the original. This is what I'm hearing from the reviews. But I hear it's good in its own way, but it's not as good as the original one.
When America is a movie like that, it's usually lacking in translation.
Yeah, but it's the same director. He decided to remake it with a bunch of people, but apparently with all the other sort of hands that were in it for the remake, I hear it just wasn't as good. He was Seymour Raw doing it. I felt it was like having this movie in black and white and having what was going on felt so raw and original, and it has to be in black and white. There's no way this should have ever been in color, and I'm glad it wasn't. But the remake was in color.
Yeah.
And maybe it lost its sort of like punch.
Its edge.
Its edge.
And sometimes color it'll warm up the emotional value of a movie.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
And maybe that just gave it a little bit too much humanity for you.
Yeah.
Look at Lip Them Nikita and look at No Way Out. Perfect example of a movie that should not have been Americanized.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. But, if somebody finds a good movie, they're always going to try to, like, Americanize it or remake it or do whatever.
God bless commercialism.
Yeah.
What I liked about the opening was, at first I thought it was sort of like The Weeknd, the way that's just people just conversating. That's going on about what appears to be their normal lives. And then the guy with John Francois, when he falls out in the front yard. And I was like, well, okay, so is this movie about a sick man now and the woman takes care of him? What's going on here? Yeah. And so then they started making allusions to, well, I have to do this again, but I don't know if I can survive it again. I was like, what, cancer treatment? Like, what's going on here? And then they start talking about the other thing. And then once they get ramped up and you realize that it's some kind of a game, my brain automatically went through like a Rolodex of, okay, they're going to have humans, they're going to make them fight and kill each other, or it's going to be something diabolical from this Rolodex that I'm spinning through in my brain right now.
Yeah.
And I came up with like the world's greatest hunt, where they're hunting other men or they're being hunted or something. Because then I thought, well, he said I'm not going to survive this, maybe because he's older and more frail, and getting away from people trying to kill you in the wilderness would not be as possible.
Yeah.
But when I tell you it turned. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean guns? What do you mean? They're not going to play Russian roulette. Then not only was I like, they're going to play Russian roulette, but they're doing this to each other in a circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a circle jerk with 45s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. I'm surprised.
So tense. I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's literally like who fires first.
Right.
Like the guy behind you can have a loaded already shoot.
But everyone's
the guy
pull the
behind
trigger
that guy could
slower.
or that guy fires.
Right.
And you survive because you didn't get shot.
Right.
It's almost like the Jeopardy buzzer. You have to get the timing right first.
That's why the light bulb is so like, look at the light bulb, but you also got to like, it's just.
What was the movie that was huge on Netflix within the last 2 years? The
Squid Games.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of gave me that sort of anxiety vibe.
It's definitely, if you like Squid Games, you'd like this.
You would.
Except it wasn't gratuitous with the violence. I really love this movie. It took me 3 hours for my anxiety to level out after watching it. It really made me anxious.
Oh, do you see?
Yeah, I haven't felt this way since probably Uncut Gems is the last movie I watched. It made me feel this anxious.
It's a great movie.
And I was thinking about like how much I felt like the whole first act was a noir. I thought it was going in a noir direction, like a crime drama or something. Just something about the way, black and white certainly, but something about the way it's shot makes you think, because there's like intrigue, there's cars passing each other and stuff. So I was thinking about like, did you need all that in order to have the tension build the way it did? Like maybe that was incredibly masterful.
Yeah,
it's like you really invest in, and then once you get to that point. And then just the direction on the actual, once you're in the Russian roulette scenario, was so masterful, like a marvel. And this was this guy's first film.
Yeah.
Yep. Amazing. Yeah. So I'm surprised that it's hard to find. I feel like it should be everywhere. It should be a master class in how to direct tension.
Yeah. I don't know why it's not out there.
Do you think because it's foreign?
I think it has to do with distribution. I mean, because I looked it up, and the company that used to have it is not around.
Really?
That somebody else picked it up, and they haven't released movies since like 2018. So, because I did a little bit of a deep dive to find out why it's not available, and I think somebody has the rights to it, and they're just not releasing it, and I just don't know why. So,
and then in this one's case, the writing was very tight in that like they added so many layers of, there's almost like a mutually assured destruction to the whole thing. Like I loved that one line where they're deciding, he shows up, he's not who they're expecting to show up, and he's like, they'll kill me if we don't. And it's like, there's so much backstory to that in just that one line that we're just sitting here trying to fill in the gaps. And they never fill in any of the gaps, right? Like you can then imagine a whole universe, like who is the one putting on this game? And there's very powerful forces behind the scenes. And in a way that like if we use the Squid Game parallel, I think Squid Game is going to ruin that, because they're going to do another season, and they're just going to reveal more and more, and it's going to ruin all of that.
Yeah.
I love that about this film, that you're left to just wonder in this. And I also love that there's that like hint of maybe they'll get caught because he had the license plate, and there's just that like he shared that.
Yep.
And so now we can imagine what happens. Maybe this detective chases it down. There's just so much that happens off screen in this film.
Yeah.
It's a rich universe, and that's a sign of good writing.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. And I mean, in the very end, it's like, I don't want to repeat the end, but I'm just saying, what happens is like
the end.
You
know, think of it as when I saw it at first, I was surprised, but then I wasn't, because I was like, you know what? Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, you want him to get away. You want him to be.
Well,
and then
it makes sense.
What happens to him is what happens to him.
Well, look at the group of people that he's sort of colluding with at that point in his poor existence. It's not surprising that someone would take those actions out of response to what happened that they did not enjoy, that affected them financially. Because it had to have been a bunch of money on the plate.
Yeah.
Had to have been.
Yeah. And speaking of, that's another, again, rich writing with like them being brothers, that I guess you could call the main antagonist in this film, of like what they don't fill in any of those gaps really at all. There's this one exchange. Do you remember what the brother says something to him? I wish I could remember the line. I should have wrote it down. It's right before they go into the duel. And apparently they've done this a lot. They said he had dueled 3 times before, so they've just been constantly doing this. They basically have a racket. And he says something to the effect of like, "This is your fault," or something of that nature. That again, I was just like, there's such a richness in what you could imagine. That led to this. I had so many things to think about throughout this, in addition to just being a ball of anxiety. So yeah, this is like a 5 out of 5 for me. I'm really glad you brought this film to me.
Yeah,
really resonated with me.
I mean,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm happy to watch. I mean, like I said, it's been years since I've seen this, and so I was excited to watch it again. And for the podcast, it was perfect. I was like, okay, yeah. So you know,
it had great tone. It had a great story. You know, it clicked all the boxes for me. You know, I'm grateful to know another French film now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just showing you tons of French films.
I know. Well, it's funny is you send me the email and you go, use the caption. It was like, it's French, isn't it? Damn. I switched. I was like, yeah, French.
Yep.
But pleasantly surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one. I guess I'm going to watch the remake today. I meant to watch it before, but I'm going to check this out. And
the remake
I don't know.
is called 13.
The remake sounds familiar. I don't know why.
It's out there. I think that is available in streaming or whatever, but the original's not. And I don't know. Maybe they're trying to sweep the original under the rug and advertise the other one more. I have no idea. But it's got Jason Statham. It's got Mickey Rourke. It's got people in it. You know. So
is Jason Statham the protagonist?
I haven't seen it. Okay, that's why I'm like, I guess I should watch this. But
I'm scrolling through photos now. It looks like they went real. He's wearing like a zoot suit or something.
No.
What's the name of the remake? Is it still 13?
It is 15. Yeah.
13.
Yeah. It's just like I said, it's in color, and I didn't like that. And I avoided. I avoided watching it for so many years. I did not want to watch the remake. I was like, I knew it was out. And I was like, and I saw reviews and they weren't as good. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever.
Why bother?
And now I'm like, all right, I guess I should just watch it. So yeah.
Just invest in it. Hey, you sat there. Well, no, actually, you liked the Wonder Woman pilot.
Yeah.
So I can't say
it was fun.
I can't say that was a chore for you.
No, it was a fun pilot.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was cheesy, campy, silly, hilarious.
That's what's on my resume.
It was good. So
has there ever been an American remake of a foreign film that's good?
Yes.
Yes. No.
Yes.
Wait, would you call a British film foreign? Is that foreign, technically? Yeah. I just mentioned earlier today, Clueless. It's an American updated reversion telling of the story of Emma.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Maybe the whole shtick is like, if it's good, then you don't realize it's a remake. If it's sad, then everybody talks.
Right.
I think the last one I can remember was Spike Lee doing Old Boy. And it's like, what are you doing?
Oh, I never saw that.
It's not good at all.
That's why I didn't want to watch it. It's like, I'd rather.
Well, I think sort of to paraphrase what you said, good storytelling is just good storytelling. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a remake. As long as the story is solid, you'll get your audience.
But I think part of why I brought up Old Boy is like Spike Lee. Spike Lee is one of my favorite filmmakers. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And it seems like his mastery of the film goes out the window. I almost feel like they become burdened by trying to hit certain beats from what they're remaking because it's the thing they love about the film. But in doing so, they start to lose grasp of the film they're making because it's not their voice anymore. And
when you're doing too much of an homage, you sort of become an impersonation, not an homage, and you sort of blur those lines.
And so a lot of American remakes feel lifeless because because there's not that energy you're trying to approximate.
Well, I mean, Old Boy has that sucker punch at the very end, you know, and you're just like, and remaking that and like, okay, so I already know that point, that thing in the movie, and you remake it, I mean, why? Like, I already know what's going to happen, you know, and especially that ending thing of what happens when he finds out who that girl really is. And it fucks with your head. And if they remake that, I already know that's going to happen. And I'm like, okay, well, why would I watch the remake? I mean,
I guess the movie's not for you. I think it must be. I mean, certainly there's the money piece of like the studio thinks, okay, good story, let's make it. But I think from like Spike Lee's point of view, I'd imagine what he's thinking is not enough people have seen this great film, and they won't because they don't want to look at subtitles. I'm going to bring this. I'm going to make America more cultured or something, right? That's where his headspace is.
You're going to learn to read, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's a fool's errand to do that. So, but I'd love to hear anybody listening, if you have examples of filmmakers doing like 1-for-1 remakes that actually like breathe new life in it. I think that's an interesting list. That should be a letterbox list. So you said Clueless is one of them.
Well, the thing it is, it's not necessarily shot for shot. It's a modernization, and it's very Americanized.
Okay.
So that's
the thing. If you're completely reinterpreting it, well, yeah, there's a lot of good examples of that.
Right. That's what I said. There's some good ones that did get remade. I can't think of them right now. But yeah, like you brought a Clueless, obviously. But yeah, there's a few.
Well, this is also reminding me. This conversation similar to the Steve Van Zandt redo of Psycho, which wasn't even a foreign film, but he just like shot for shot redid Psycho. Sorry, Gus.
No, it's not.
Now, guitarist of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band.
That's what you talking about, the Vincent D'Onofrio, right?
No, it was Vince Vaughn.
Oh, Vince Vaughn. Thank you.
Yeah,
and they did add some scenes.
Yeah,
because there's that peephole scene.
Yeah, well, yeah, they could get away with a little bit more. They Hayes Law to deal with, but I think.
But he's doing it for shot in that Psycho.
Yeah.
There's like a conspiracy theory that he was doing that to prove a point that like I can literally go shot for shot and it's not going to feel the same. And like trying to speak to the essence of like what filmmaking is or something like that. No, but that's just like a theory. He might have just been.
So one particular horror movie that I think is either just as good or maybe a little bit better than the original was the remake of The Hills Have Eyes.
Because the original 70s was kind of,
but the remake. Oh my God, that remake!
Where they're in the motorhome,
awesomely shot. The story's great. I mean, everything worked in that. And one of those. It's actually one of my favorite horror films and it's a remake.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's way more brutal. It's way more brutal than the original.
I know. Way, but it doesn't. The brutality in it doesn't take away from the actual. It adds so much more because you're like, oh my God. It's like, there's so many movies that actually are brutal just to be brutal.
Right.
This one's brutal, but it has like just such a good story. It's got good acting.
Well, and also the original leaned on the fact of that really creepy bald guy. They leaned on him a lot. He was a lot of the creep factor in the very original.
Yeah.
And luckily they could have that in way, way, way more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to watch that movie right now. So I should see it.
It is spooky season.
It is spooky season.
It is.
Totally. So yeah.
It is indeed.
All right. Well, I think this is another episode of BRINK Film Club.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah. I mean, some episodes are a little longer than others, Some episodes are a little shorter and mix it up.
Well, what I like is how there's a string that runs through everything that we bring, but yet everything we bring is complementary or a really good juxtaposition to the other features. So I think we're very lucky, and you kids are lucky to learn this.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Josh, for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate
thank you, Josh.
Like I said, I hope I brought some sort of perspective that was interesting, but I'm really happy both of you are doing this. Very proud to have BRINK Film Club be part of the BRINK family.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and I want to shout out our letterbox because we set up a letterbox for BRINK. So there's a BRINK HQ. And one, you'll be able to see every film that's ever on BRINK Film Club there.
Yep.
So that'll be an ongoing list, which is great. And by the way, we should all be going and rating these films I feel like that might help them get bigger releases. The more people that talk about them, I'm sure that's one of the metrics they're looking at.
Yeah.
And then we also have all the films that BRINK distributes listed on there. So that's a cool list to check out.
Well, and also in that vein, we need to let the kids know where they can find our podcast now.
Oh, you can find it, Spotify, YouTube. It's Apple.
Yeah.
Where else?
I think we're on
Podbean. You can actually go to Audible directly.
If you listen on Audible, we're on Audible too.
And they also need to look up the incredible screening room that we're in on Congress in downtown Tucson. My name is Veronica Chase. You can find me on Facebook and other socials. Same as Mr. Pike. we're really chugging along with this. Like, I'm excited to see what the listeners have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, kids, if you have any feedback, anything you want to hear us discuss, any topics, any movies, shows, whatever, please let us know.
Yeah. And on Letterboxd, we should create a list of remakes. Those are best remakes. And I don't know, like people can, after this episode, they could visit. And I'm going to try to populate into our own Letterboxd some of the best remakes. And
I like that. I like it.
And see, maybe hopefully create a conversation.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's cool. Like anytime you have different like little themes like that popping up in episodes, go off and play them. Yeah, that's great.
Totally do that.
Cool. I like it.
All right. Thank you. Fun episode. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Signing off.
Bye, children.
Now commencing our ascent back to the surface. If you want more content, visit brink.com. If you want less content, you are happy and well adjusted. Congratulations. Your hosts were David Pike and Veronica Chase. All art by Andrea Osoynik. Theme song by Josh Belhumeur. If you are angry, DM death threats at Brink Media on Instagram. If you are horny, also DM us. Thank you for your attention. You are free to go.